The concept for Epartrade is basically, in my opinion, there's a big hole in the internet. So the internet started many years ago, but there's never been an online business community for racers on the World Wide Web. The need for Epartrade is actually quite obvious. Basically, people in the business of auto racing need a place online to hang out and get their problems solved.
It's extremely simple for a buyer or for a supplier to interact on the platform. The first thing you need to do is sign in, which is free. And the second thing is, when you see a product that you're interested in, all you need to do is click on request more information. If it's a company, you click on request more information, and then from there, it is forwarded directly to the buyer or to the supplier.
You can go to epartrade.com, you become part of a community of businesses in racing, and it makes sourcing products much easier than just on the internet or using Google.
At Epartrade, there is no e-commerce. It's literally a connection just like at a trade show. So now, any time of the year, a buyer could reach out to a supplier through an email.
More than that, it's a place to go just to keep current every day. So it's a good place to start your workday in your racing business or in your offices of your professional race team. And you know you're current when it comes to new technology, industry news, technical papers, technical videos, all of that and more. We're not looking for a million hits per day. All we want is people who are really the volume buyers of racing products in the racing industry to be part of the little world of Epartrade. We have racing businesses participating from around the world. So you get suppliers from around the world, you get buyers from around the world.
Epartrade really eliminates having to travel, closing down your shop. Now you have a place to showcase globally your racing product and technology.
Good morning from California. It is 9 o'clock here. I am Francisque Savignan, the founder and CEO of Epartrade. And with me this morning are Judy Kim, the co-founder of Epartrade, and our wonderful host, Mr. Brad Gilly himself. So this is the episode number 204, produced by Epartrade. This is the first one of the 2022 season. We ended last year in December with an incredible week. We co-produced with our good friends from Racer.com, Race Industry Week, the second edition, where we had 5 full days of live technical and business webinars. And usually after the Race Industry Week, each year in December, we take a little break to be prepared for the next season. So we are delighted to come back this year in 2022. We have a full lineup of companies that have requested to run tech webinars with us. So this is the first one, and it's going to be about filtration with K&N. And I will let my good friend Judy King tell us a little bit more about them.
Well, thank you, Francisque. And as you said, we really pretty much just finished Race Industry Week, 55 hours of content, which was a joy to put on for this industry. And I was just taking a look at the platform yesterday. We have thousands upon thousands of racing businesses signed in to this platform that are actually using it. Buyers reaching out to suppliers, and now suppliers also reaching out to buyers. So that it's just growing every day. It's very heartwarming to see. But today's all about K&N, our good friends over at K&N, who I've had the pleasure of working with for 23, 24 years now. And what I admire about K&N is there is still a group of people there that are out there racing, all forms of racing. We have a couple on today. We have Steve Williams, that is out there NHRA drag racing, but Jonathan here, drag races, and Tony Yorkman, I see you all over the place. You're all across the country. So it's a joy to have you on today. On to you, Brad.
Yeah, this is really exciting, and I'm happy that we're kicking off another year of everything that we've got going on. And Francisque, Judy, everyone at Epartrade, I know there's a lot of hard work that goes into setting up all of the webinars. And now that we get back to the weekly groove, it's going to be a lot of fun. And I know there's a lot of exciting things coming up this year for sure. So we're excited to get started. Thank you.
We're excited to have you back, Brad. I mean, you and Jeff have played a tremendous part in the success of the series, and having you guys every week with us is like a great honor. So, so thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
I guess we should start it, right, Brad? So you guys are on for the next 45 or so minutes, and then we'll pop up at the end and we'll wrap everything and talk about next week.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you, Francis. Thank you very much, Judy. We appreciate it. And we're kicking off 2022. Our topic today is Filtration for the Future by K&N Engineering. And our two panelists today, Jonathan Fiello, Chief Engineering Officer, and Tony Yorkman, the Senior Manager of Marketing Partnerships with K&N Filters. Gentlemen, how y'all doing today?
We're doing good, Brad. How are you doing?
Good. Doing fantastic. Yeah, really excited to kick off the year, both the racing year, obviously, with everything happening on the track, but being able to be here with what we've got going on with our tech webinars every single week. Before we get started, I just want to let everyone know who is joining us here today and who is watching that anytime you have a question, if there's anything that you want to ask, please feel free to type it in the chat below, and we'll do our best to get all of the questions in that we can. And we've got a lot of different topics that we are definitely going to be covering here, and we'll go ahead and get things started. So, Tony, I actually want to start with you. I know we all had an opportunity to talk a little bit earlier today, but I just want to talk about where we are here in 2022, because on the marketing side of things with K&N, you guys are truly immersed in all forms of motorsports, and I know we see you at the track on both the pit side of things and on the grandstand side of things as well. So can you give us an idea of some things that we can look forward to coming up here in 2022?
Yeah, sure. We're hitting the ground running. 2022 is already starting. We have events that are kicking off in the off-road world very specifically, and even with NASCAR this past weekend. And we're getting ready for NHRA this weekend. We're in just about every discipline of motorsports, so it's kind of hard to grab our hands around it, but we're already moving and out in the field. And our biggest objective to start the first quarter of the season is usually to support the teams and get out there and make sure we have that support with them in every form, and then we can make a little bit of switch and start focusing on consumers. But the beginning of our season starts with reconnecting with our teams, our supporters, and the people out there using our product to prove that what it does.
Well, that's going to be a lot of fun. And Jonathan, let's just sort of dive into it, because I know a lot of people who are in our audience right now, obviously they're racers, and any type of K&N application that's going to help their race car go faster or be better is going to be important to them, but they also get their race cars to and from the racetrack. So there's a lot of things that happen within our passenger cars and our tow vehicles as well. I'm a customer. I've had K&N air filters, even in my Fiat, to oil filters on my motorcycle, to everything that I use. So I believe in the product and we're excited about it. But, let's just start things off here. What's the difference between the filter that might go in my Chevy truck versus what might go in a monster truck?
Yeah, that's we obviously get that question quite a bit, Brad, and I'm glad you're a consumer at K&N. We've got a lot of them out there, but we still get that question quite a bit. And so I have in front of me here, this is just your standard disposable air filter. And so I'm going to try to get as technical as I can here, but a standard disposable filter, the filtration that happens here, it's all surface or barrier filtration. What happens is the contaminants, they don't penetrate the media. What they do is the contaminants actually hit the surface. And that's why you see so much surface area in a disposable filter, okay? And then on top of it, a disposable filter is gonna have, typically, most of them, they're gonna have a foam urethane sealing ring around here. So that's what you see in this. A disposable filter will last anywhere from 12 to 24,000 miles. I'll give this to my man, Tony, there. Depending on environment. Now, a K&N is a lot different. So you can see the difference here. So it looks like there's a lot less surface area, but K&N filters use what's known as depth loading filtration. So what happens is the contaminants actually penetrate into the media, right? We have multiple layers of cotton media, and depending on the application, like you said, I mean, a normal everyday driving, gas burning vehicle is going to have 4 layers of cotton plus our oil. A diesel application that may see some heavy off-road use is going to have six layers of cotton. A drag race application may have a single layer or 2 layer. It all depends. NASCAR could be between 2 and 4 layers. So that's how we can really change the way the filter's designed depending on the application. But yeah, so the filtration, again, it's all depth loading. So it builds up, it penetrates, and it builds up. And a K&N air filter will actually filter better the more contaminants that it holds, right? Because it's creating more area, it's holding stuff, and those things work as almost as blocking other contaminants, okay? So that's the big difference between a disposable and a K&N. Ours are high flow, they're gonna flow more air typically than an OEM filter. And then the last thing is the urethane sealing ring. So we don't use a foam urethane, we use a urethane elastomer. This is a high tear strength, high tensile strength urethane elastomer. And that's why they have a lifetime warranty, Brad.
Yeah, and you mentioned you show us a disposable filter, and it's just that, it's disposable. When it comes to the K&N filters, this is something that you can use and reuse, continue to clean, re-oil, and all of that. So give us an overview of actually how the filter works, from the consumer level of seeing things. What do we do to wash it? What do we do to oil it? All of that.
Yeah. So we get that question a lot. I think, Tony, even when we're at the track, you probably get that all the time as well, whether it's off-road events or drag race events, whatever it may be. But that seems to be probably the most common question that we get asked, and people typically always ask, when do I know to clean my K&N air filter, right? Some applications you have a restriction gauge, right? And so that vehicle will tell you, and a lot of late model vehicles now, it's all put into the display too. So it's reading the restriction and it'll tell you when it needs to be changed. And if you're using a K&N, then that's when you wash it. But not everything's that way. So the first thing I always tell people is it's all visual, right? So if this air filter is really dirty and it's really caked up, there's a lot of contaminants, a lot of dirt on it right there, that's usually the first indication. You know what? You need to wash it, right? But if it's just an everyday driven vehicle, like a commuter, and you're driving mostly just on the highway, 50 to 100,000 miles is common for them to before they actually need to wash it and re-oil it. Now, how they do it, we get that question a lot as well. So we sell recharger kits, right? Our recharger kits are very popular. The cleaner is specially formulated to break down all the contaminants in an air filter and break down the oil in a K&N air filter, because they are oiled cotton, right? And so you spray that on, you let that sit for around 3 to 8 minutes, depending on how bad it is. And then you wash it out with a hose. And then we tell people, you want to let it dry for up to 24 hours. If it's dry outside, it's warm outside, it'll dry quicker than that. But it's always best to get as much water out of it as possible. And then you follow the instructions to re-oil it, right? Our recharger kits show on there how exactly to re-oil it. And you let that wick and then you reinstall it.
Is there any difference? You talked about several different applications, from passenger cars to race cars and, really everything in between. Is there any difference in the media itself, in that is the process for doing it in my pickup truck the same that it would be in my race vehicle?
Yeah, there actually is a different process. And so, the everyday vehicle, again, we use a standard 4-ply cotton. So we've engineered this media since, back since 1969, and it's a special weave cotton, right? And so we have a special media, we call it a heavy duty media, which has got a tighter weave, right? And that may be something you mentioned, when we talked about a monster truck, right? A monster truck may use that special media, right? A drag race may use a single layer of our standard media. And then what happens is, if a consumer, they can go on our website and they can purchase the filters for their everyday vehicles. But if they have something that's specific for a drag race application, let's say, or even an off-road application, and they're not seeing it online, they can call customer service, because we do have a custom filter program. And what we'll do is we'll take all that information down from, we want to understand how big is the engine, right? What kind of RPMs does it turn? What's the horsepower? And then of course is what's the environment, right? If it's an off-road environment, we want to know that, right? And then any other special requests as far as that as well. And then we'll build that for somebody, and that program has been very successful for it. Actually, Tony and I worked on that and established that with a couple other people here years ago. And I don't know, Tony, we get a lot of questions about that still to this day, right? And I'm sure you do as too, huh?
Sure. Even going back to this past weekend, I was at a King of the Hammers at an event, and it's a really surprising to find out how many people actually do know about the program, but there is still a lack of that attention and understanding really of filtration and how it works, and really about what our products do and how they perform. But we'll see that in the weekend. I went out there and there's a lot of those vehicles, and you can't see 20 feet in front of your face because you're in a silt bed. But these guys are running a standard filter that goes onto a Toyota Camry. And so having to educate and put in that situation to the material that Jonathan attests to, like the XD media, it's very specifically for those kind of applications. So it's something we see a lot of, but we're narrowing it down.
Yeah, and then we also have, we have pre-filter wraps and those. So if we understand the environment, consumer can purchase those as well. And that's just an extra layer of protection, like as Tony used the example of King of the Hammers, right? And so we have those kinds of things. So those are things we like to understand depending on, whether it's full race, off-road, et cetera, et cetera.
And when you say customizing, how far does that go? Is that just customizing the way the media is done? Or if I give you measurements and I say, hey, I built an airbox that's this by this by this, can we go that far into customizing something?
You bet we can. If you want to put a 2,800 horsepower twin turbo in your Fiat, and go drag racing with it, and you've only got so much room from there to the core support or whatever, we'll build it. So it has to do with media, and it also has to do with dimensions as well. So we want to know what's the envelope, what's the box that we're working with.
Yeah, I think the Fiat would get ripped in half with something like that, but it would be pretty fun to see for sure. Designing and developing test air filters, again, I don't think there is any good product out there, especially one with a legacy of K&N, that just builds something and says, all right, we're done. I know you guys continue to work with the technology and everything that we can do to advance and improve on the product. What goes on?
Yeah, and so I think it's important that people understand that, we don't reverse engineer from an existing product. We do product design, development, and engineering, and that goes from air filters to cabin filters and then intakes. And I know we'll talk about intakes in a little bit, but when we design, when we identify the application that we want to go after, we'll procure an airbox. We'll find an airbox. We'll purchase that. That'll get brought in-house. It'll be given to the engineering team and they'll start with that. They literally take, if there's an air filter in it, they take it and throw it away. We don't need it. We want to understand the fit, form, and function the way it is, right? So that's what we do. So they design it. They will, we use all three-dimensional CAD software. We use SolidWorks. And they design an air filter. Then after that, what we do is we send it to tooling, and we design and we manufacture all our own tooling here in-house in Riverside as well. So it does that. And then after that, we make a prototype sample, and then that prototype sample is then sent to a lab. So I don't know, I think it was about 10, 15 years ago, K&N, we invested and built our own in-house test lab, okay, specifically for filtration. So all of our air filters, we follow the ISO 5011 test standard, right? It's a specific test standard, and we follow it to a T. So every single air filter that we design and develop is going to run through our lab, and it's going to run through that ISO 5011 test is what it is. So we run our filters through that. We make sure it meets the fit, form, function we want. We're specifically looking for three things. We're looking for the efficiency. That's the percentage of the contaminants that it's going to capture. And then we're going to look at the capacity, which is how many contaminants it'll capture, which we measure in grams. And then we're looking at flow rate as well, right? Because flow rate is important. Our filters are high flow. So we do all of that through there. Once we get the numbers that we like, depending on application, then we'll finish up the tooling and we'll then send it off into manufacturing, and it'll go active so a consumer can then purchase it.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty extensive process for sure. We do have a question from the chat, and I want to remind you, if you're viewing right now, if you do have a question for either Jonathan or Tony, you can just ask it in the chat and we'll get this. Tony, I think this might be more for you, since I love K&N products. I'm an automotive engineering student. How can I get involved in racing? Now, I don't know if that is from the, looking for sponsorship, or if that is, hey, if I'm an engineering student, what can I do maybe to get involved with K&N?
Yeah, well, look, we can answer both sides of that. On the sponsorship side, we're always looking for opportunities to really have the in fact user of our product. So first and foremost, if anybody that's looking for sponsorship, I would encourage you to learn a little bit more about K&N's business model, and then promote that and let me know how you can help K&N achieve their goals through your program. What does your program offer to support that? And then we can explore a partnership together and see how we can support it. On the other side, getting involved, I will tell you there is an extreme need out there in the pits for people that are interested in being involved on the motorsports side. We Jonathan and I think when we started our relationship, here at K&N a number of years ago. That was a big part of what Jonathan and I worked on, was bringing the R&D to the racetrack. And I'm sure that's the same in any kind of business. But at K&N, I know that we're consistently out in the motorsports world trying to explore everything that's out there. And really our goal is product validity. We use the motorsports faction of to bring validity to our product. It's the same technology that we're using out in the everyday race car to the everyday street vehicle. So it's the same technology that we're using, and we're always looking for people to help us push that agenda.
Yeah, which, speaking of you guys being together for a number of years, Tony, both you and Jonathan have been a part of K&N for, getting close to the better part of 2 decades, right? I mean, This isn't something that is new to either of you.
Right. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, we walked into this room talking about old pics of us at a Norwalk Horsepower Challenge event for NHRA a little over 11 years ago, and we both had different hairstyles.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. Jonathan, did I hear right from Judy? You're into drag racing yourself. What do you race?
I am. So I've drag raced since I had a driver's license. That was one of the main reasons that drove me to get study engineering in college, and then look in the automotive aftermarket and luckily, 20 years ago, it happened here at K&N, but I've drag raced all on the sportsman level. So NHRA Super Comp, Top Dragster, Top Sportsman. I currently bracket race. I run as many of the high dollar bracket races that are out here on the West Coast, things like the Spring Fling and the K&N Southwest Showdown that we're sponsoring out in Tucson. So yeah, I have a 1967 Chevelle that I bracket race right now.
Wow, that's really cool. How about you, Tony? Any racing in your world?
No, I don't have that competitive nature like Jonathan has. I've been a car guy since I can remember. I've never had a job outside of the automotive industry. And I own a few vehicles, and I've always got a project vehicle of some sort going on. Probably too many if you ask my wife, but it's never been on the competitive side. I like to do burnouts.
Yeah, I think you and I fit into the same category. Before we move on to really start talking about full intake systems, Jonathan, I want to go back to the cleaning here for just a quick moment, because when you buy one of the recharge kits, I mean, it is pretty self-explanatory. The instructions in it are great, but look, we all have a tendency to kind of want to do things our own way. And sometimes our own way is, well, if they tell me to use this much, then maybe this much is better. But what really is the proper technique, and what are some things we need to avoid?
Yeah. So, you can't use too much of the cleaner, right? I mean, if it still looks dirty, you're going to still want to use that. So, hey, more is better on the cleaner if it's as needed, right? On the oil, you can't over oil a K&N air filter. You want to be careful about it, and so that's why it's important to allow the media to what we call wick as you put the oil on, whether you're using an aerosol spray or a squeeze bottle. You want to allow it to wick, because if you over oil it, what'll happen is it'll start dripping off, and you can wipe that off. So you want to be very careful. The instructions show a very good job, specifically with the squeeze bottle, that you oil the pleat, every single pleat, right? And you leave a little bit on the ends. That will allow it to wick properly and allow the right amount of oil on it. And so really the two things, the don'ts, is let's not flood it with oil. More is not better on that point. And then the second thing is don't use compressed air to try to dry the media, right? So that question comes up quite a bit. If you're using 100 PSI shop air to dry water out of the filter, look, the media is cotton. It could be cotton, and some of our other ones are synthetic. What'll happen is you'll put holes in that, right? And then you're going to lose efficiency. You're going to lose capacity. So using compressed air is a big no-no as well.
And on the oil side, we always talk, I spend a lot of time on the consumer level at different events, talking with different enthusiasts. And one of the keys I always tell them is if you don't have to adjust and add oil after your first pass, you might have done a little too much. So take note for the next time. Yeah. Usually you want less is more, see where it's at. If you have any empty spots, then you can go back and touch up. That's usually the key to know that you've done it right. It's never perfect. Nobody gets it perfect the first time, but you adjust. And it's a lifetime filter, so you've got a lifetime of figuring that out. Right.
Yeah. I might have been guilty of the compressed air before. impatience does get the best of you, but I've never put a hole in one. So I feel good about that.
Yeah.
A couple of quick questions from the chat, and we'll talk about intake systems and a few different things as well. You talked about King of the Hammers this past weekend, a lot of dust. In Dakar, it's sands. Do you develop different filters for different types of off-road? And I would imagine exactly what he's talking about. You talked about more of the silt type stuff, but maybe in other places it's more of a coarse grit in whatever the sand is or whatever the environment is.
Yeah, we for the off-road stuff, specifically anything that's heavy dust, like King of Hammers, our media, the cotton media it's tighter. Number one, it's a tighter weave, and number two, there's more of it. Okay, and so naturally, because you have more cotton, it's going to hold more oil as well. So that's the levels there. You've got more layers, tighter cotton, and more oil, and that's what gives it the protection for those types of uses. So yeah, we launched that. I don't know, Tony, that was what, 12 years ago when we launched all our heavy duty stuff. And so that type of media, and we have specific filters. And the one way to tell that a filter's got that type of media in it is the numbering sequence. The end of it is going to be XD, right? So that's the extreme duty part of a filter. So a universal common part number could be an RC 5100. It would be an RC 5100 XD, and that's how you know it's for extreme off-road use.
And I think through some of my personal experiences, I'm a side-by-side UTV enthusiast myself, so I spend a little bit of time in the sand. I will say that the best course for that is making sure you have one of those wraps on. And the bigger reason for one of those wraps specifically for sand is it allows the filter not to get packed in the pleats with sand. The sand will stick and get wedged in there because of what it is, because the nature of what it is, and it'll start to load the filter up too much too quickly. That extra barrier allows it just not to have a place to rest. It is almost like a shield protection. So I really encourage anybody that plays in the silt or in the sand to use one of those wraps. They're definitely beneficial.
Yeah.
It at least increases your longevity and your servicing at the very least.
Yeah. And I think one thing on that too, to just go one step further on the technical part, those wraps will stop anything that's about 10 micron and larger. And then the filter will stop everything that can go as small as 1 micron and smaller, right? So to Tony's point, that wrap's going to knock a lot of the big stuff off before it even gets to the filter, right? And then the main filter will filter out all the smaller contaminants.
Yeah, that's actually a great advantage to be able to do that. One more quick question from the chat. I'm curious one, what is K&N Engineering doing to enhance business with the popularity of electric vehicles getting stronger and stronger? Not that internal combustion engines won't be around, it's just that they're going to maybe decline in popularity over time, or at least usage a bit on the road. So how does that affect K&N, and what are you guys looking toward in that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's a hot topic around here. That's for sure. So, I mean, a couple of things. We do have 2 projects that we're working on right now, specifically for electric vehicles, but we're a little ways out. So I don't want to go into too much detail on those, but I can say over the last 12 months, I have a team that's dedicated into looking at additional products throughout the space. And one of their focus is EV products. So we've got that. We do make the cabin filters for a lot of the electric vehicles, Tesla, a lot of the other ones, Honda, everything else. So we do have products already for those. So the cabin filters are out there. And so we're just going to continue to look. I couldn't agree more with what you said there. I mean, I don't think the popularity of internal combustion engines is going to go down that much, but we are going to see this rise of EV vehicles at some point. So look, we're going to have solutions for that, and we hope to, if everything goes well this year, we may show a few of those at the end of the year, like maybe the SEMA show or PRI, something like that.
Oh, that'd be something to look forward to. So we'll definitely check it out. All right, let's talk about a K&N intake system. Let's even go beyond the filter. So, what can you tell us about what's out there for the racer and what you guys are working on?
Yeah, so we'll start with the replacement intake system. So I brought this one, and this one's actually for the new Ford Bronco, right? So the new Ford Bronco has been a hot vehicle since Ford talked about it. We actually purchased one, and we've been really working hard to get all the intake kits, done for that. So this one's new. We're set to start shipping this hopefully middle to the end of March. That's the goal. But, intake, there's a lot of engineering, a lot of product design that goes in intake. They're obviously a lot harder than air filters because there's just more components to it. And late model vehicles are getting harder and harder to develop intake kits for, just because the packaging where the engine is getting tighter. The fuel trims and other requirements specifically related to the ECM are getting tighter and tighter. Emissions are getting tighter and tighter. So there's a lot of things, but look, we're going to conquer. We're still going to make it. But how we design an intake system is we bring the vehicle in. We actually have to procure a vehicle, and we have a lot of contacts. Tony's a big help for that too. But throughout the Southern California area, we go as far as Nevada, Arizona. But we get the vehicle in. The first thing we do is the engineers scan it. So we have a 3-dimensional scanner that essentially builds us a image and a CAD file of what the underhood geometry looks like for the vehicles, because we've only got so much room to work with. We've only got a box to work with here, And so then the engineers, what they do is then they go back and on CAD, they design the intake system. From there, we go and we 3-dimensional print the components. So the tubes, the boxes, and everything. We have a line of 4 FDM 3-dimensional printers. So we print all the components. We do that. Then what we do when that's all ready, we take the vehicle and we dyno it in the stock configuration. So here at K&N, we have 4 chassis dynos, and one of those is actually a power sports dyno as well. And so depending on what it is, if it's all-wheel drive or 2-wheel drive, front-wheel drive, we put it on that specific dyno. And we get a baseline horsepower and torque number, okay? So that's our baseline in stock configuration at the rear wheels. We then put these prototype components on there, and we start running dyno tests, right? Every single intake system that K&N releases is guaranteed to increase horsepower, every single one of them. So we will not release an intake kit until we see horsepower gains. Some of them we can see up to 50 horsepower. Some small displacement we may see 9 or 10. It just all depends on what that is. So after that prototype makes power, the second thing we do, which is probably the most important part of the process, is we then do drive cycles, okay? And that drive cycle could be anywhere from 8 miles to 800 miles. It just depends on what it is, gas, diesel, turbocharged, just depends. And what we do is we have onboard monitoring systems that we plug into the OBD2, and we watch everything that the ECM is telling, it's telling us everything about it, right? And what we're specifically looking for is the fuel trim number. We want to make sure that we didn't make the intake so free flowing that the computer can't compensate and put more fuel in, because it's only got a window of how much fuel it can put in. And we get this question a lot. People will say, why don't you just make the biggest intake and put the biggest filter on it? Well, you can't, because the engine, what it'll do is the ECM will just say, I can't put enough fuel in it. It's outside my window. It'll start throwing codes and that kind of stuff. So we take a lot of pride in doing usable horsepower that's within the window, so consumers have no issues. So once we do that, we make sure, so if that's all done, we then go into tooling. There's several different components that are tooled here, whether it's rotomold or injection molding, and we put that all together. When we get all the final components together, we do one last test to verify that what we saw on the prototype is exactly what we saw from production. And then after that, it goes active and consumers can start buying it.
I think by the nature of it just being an intake on something like that, typically these are probably pretty easy to swap out. But what kind of challenges do you actually face fighting for real estate? And do you ever have to run into issues where maybe you're fighting for real estate with other aftermarket products? Like, I want to put your intake system on, but I want to add this and this and this. I need more space.
Yeah, and that's a good question. And that's been coming up a lot, because the OEMs too, they're taking a little bit more of an industrial design aesthetic when you start looking under hood. They're putting a lot more covers on it. They're really hiding a lot of stuff. And those covers, they can really impede on space specifically for an intake, and the front fascia design for a car really dictates how much room is there right by the fender wells for an intake to go. So we're fighting that naturally. As far as other automotive aftermarket parts, yeah, if somebody's going to use something like a throttle body spacer or some component like that, it then moves the location of the throttle body. So then we start running into some issues with that. One of the new products that I was going to talk about is we're going to launch a new air oil separator, right? And we're trying to make sure that product fits, with or without our intake, and there's no issues with packaging there. But yeah, no, it's becoming more of a challenge for that,
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see the way things go, especially when you look under the hood, and even more interesting when you look under the covers that they put on there and realize how uncool it might look nowadays,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
by
right.
comparison to what we used to see. You know, you talk about adjusting the product design and different things like that. And again, race car applications are also very specific. And I'm just going to use race car as a general term. I know people are involved in different forms of motorsports, and even, you know, marine power sports and different things like that. But trying to figure out some of those things. So let's say I am a consumer and I'm trying to do something really cool. And we talk about doing the customization of something like that as well. What information do I need? What helps you help me the most?
Yeah, I mean, first off, pictures helps me the most, right? You know, so that way we understand, and then application, and, you know, and back on the racing part of it, you know, we make, you know, air filters, but we also make other components where somebody could build, you know, build their own intake system, right? Whether they want to, you know, build it as an intake, or they want to put just adapters to a throttle body or a turbo. So, you know, it all depends on that application, but we manufacture a lot of those components as well. And so that hardcore, whether it's a drag racer or marine is a great example. You know, we have marine flame arresters, we have other components for marine as well. So somebody could put that together. A lot of this is under our website, but, you know, to answer your question, yeah, you know, pictures, number one, is always very, very helpful. And then, you know, anything we can get with dimensions, right? We've built intakes before where people, you know, they had a ruler out there and they were giving us rough dimensions, and it works, you know. And then obviously, you know, the application, what's the environment that we're looking at? You know, is it marine? Is it off-road? Is it drag race? That kind of stuff.
And I think a big part to add to that is knowing your end goal, right? Knowing where you're going with the overall project, and how we can feed into that.
Yeah, how much, you know, how often do you run into, or how much could you help me with, let's just say I have this idea of what I want to do, and maybe the idea looks cool, but all of a sudden you look at it from an engineering side of things and think, well, if you do this and it twists this way, then all of a sudden now you're cutting yourself off. I mean, how much could you help me with that?
Yeah, yeah, that happens a lot.
Yeah, we see that a lot,
Yeah.
specifically when we get on one-on-one
Yeah.
conversations at a different events. When we're in a consumer-facing event, we'll see a lot of people that'll go, I've got a 29 Ford truck and I want to put an LS in it, and I've got 6 inches between the throttle body and the front grille. What can we do, right? So seeing that and being able to adjust and going to the universal components like Jonathan's referring to helps us put it there. We have people that are on staff in our customer service department that they're pretty fluent in that way, that they literally will go to the drawing board and build you out with just some pictures and some dimensions, and build you out a full complete intake based off your space and your needs. So we're constantly trying to shift and make those accommodations.
Yeah, and I think it's important too, you know, you kind of touched, like, one of the most common mistakes we see what people want is they want to go way too big, right? The intake's way too big, the filter's way too big. And that's why it's really important to understand, you know, I mean, like Tony made a good point, you know, what's the end goal here? But like, if you got a you know, let's say a 400-inch small block that's, you know, that you're only turning 6,000 RPM versus something that somebody has modified and it's a new LS3 that they want to turn 11,000 RPM, right? There's a big difference there. So as long as we understand that, you know, but yeah, a lot of times people just think, you know, it's just, let's oversize it, let's do that. Well, you know, there's a lot of drawback to that, such as airspeed and other things that could really affect, you know, an engine. And, you know, one of the other things is whether it's carbureted or fuel injected, right? A carbureted vehicle is going to have a mass air sensor. That mass air sensor is so critical to airspeed and location, right? And you just don't want to put the biggest thing on it. So those are a lot of the common mistakes that we see, you know, when people are trying to do these.
And the
these
other
custom
side,
things.
which is people that want to go too small, or they don't want to run an intake system.
Yeah.
They just want to put a filter on the end of that throttle
Yeah.
body, and you're going, that's not enough, right? You're causing yourself more harm than good.
Right.
Yeah, you're keeping the bugs out, but
Yeah.
you're not really going for your performance. So that's where we a lot of times have to educate and adjust.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, it can be a big part of the tuning for sure. And, you know, we do have a lot of engine builders who are subscribed to Epartrade and who watch these webinars and all of that. You know, Tony, if an engine builder wanted to even partner with K&N and say, hey, I'm doing a lot of these engines for these types of race cars or whatever, you know, I want to be able to add something to this. What kind of programs do you have available?
We do. We work with a lot of the big ones and a lot of the small ones. Anybody we can get kind of in contact with, because education is kind of my goal and key in my role. I really appreciate any of the time that I can get in contact with an engine builder and really help them understand on that side of it, what our capabilities are and what we're doing to help them, really achieve and get our product out there. Because again, product validity is really the main goal. So, but yeah, anybody I would encourage to reach out to our group and start there. The first place to see is what we have and what we can do. I mean, there's extensive programs like Jonathan's mentioned where we have custom builds and we build one-offs in rebuild groups in those kind of ways. And again, we do it for the average consumer to an enthusiast. When I say enthusiast, I mean a racer or a participant in some kind of way, and on the chassis and engine builder side of it. So it's something that we really encourage to get us involved.
Yeah, and it's great, the participation that we get here at Epartrade. I also want to real quick just mention, we're starting this again every week like we have been with the Race Industry Now webinars. Next week, we have Hyperfuels, and the title will be Hyperfuels at Convenient Shipping for 100 low lead race gas. And we'll just continue to let you know week after week as to what we're doing here on Epartrade. There's a comment from the chat that I really like because I think it does speak to, another side of what you have to do. And it says, good looking intake, the one you showed from the Bronco. If I had a Bronco, I would get one. Hey, look, anytime we raise the hood on our vehicle, we want people to kind of stop and turn their heads and for it to look cool. Not only do you have to design something that works, but the aesthetics of it and all of that, how much goes into that?
Yeah. And so, 20 years ago, function was way more important, right? Because the aesthetic part of it really started to evolve, I'd say, over the last 10 years, and so, we've got multiple lines of intakes. We started, when our first intake that we did, it had a heat shield and it had an open element air filter on it. And now you can see the difference here. So the aesthetics, we've done a lot more styling to it, right? And this is more of a closed box system. So, we're providing the consumer with for most applications, an open element heat shield intake, and then a closed box. And the closed box is going to have a lot more of that aesthetics to it. It's going to have nice branding to it. But one of the things I want to point out on this too is we wanted it to be functional. So we wanted these closed airbox intakes to look good and be functional. So this top right here, it's actually a pre-filter. It's foam behind here, right? So instead of it just being closed, it's got a foam pre-filter. So you've got your normal openings here, but we're also pulling air from the top and we're pre-filtering it before it goes into the primary filter. So it's aesthetically pleasing and it's functional as well.
Wow, that is really cool, actually. I think that is pretty neat. If you have a question, we still have some time. Again, you can just type it into the chat and we'll get it for either Jonathan and or Tony. You mentioned some of the new products that you guys are working on. What else can you tell us?
Yeah, so we last year we did wiper blades. So we have a high performance, high quality wiper blade that's out right now. We launched automotive oil. So we're in the oil space because we have a premium HP oil filter, one of the best on the market, and we knew that automotive oil would pair well with that. So we've got that out there. We're getting ready to launch power sports oil, motor oil as well. So we have that. We're looking at a full line of car maintenance products, such things as penetrating oil, all-in-one cleaner. We got those coming out, and some car care products too that we're a little ways away, right? So we're going to kind of branch out a little bit into the performance maintenance and performance car care. We've got a throttle control module that we've had, which is a piggyback plug-in style tuner for pedal tuning. So we have that, and we've updated it. We've got version 2.0 now that will be all controlled Bluetooth through your phone and everything. So we've got that going. And then we've got a couple other things that we're looking at too that that'll really, we hope to change the market in some other areas. So adjacent categories, new products, new innovation. It's been a big focus for us for the last 2 years, and it'll continue to be that way for the next year. I don't know, did I miss anything, Tony? Is that all?
No, but you did bring up a good point of our oil filters. We haven't had much discussion on our oil filters yet so far, but we have a pretty extensive line that cover a consumer application, but also cover race. And more. They are all high performance. They are all high performing filters, but we have ones that are specifically for race applications, inline oil and fuel filters that are more of the billet, and they're a reusable style, but we also have the standard disposable, our high performance that I know we're here before I was at K&N,
Yep.
and they are, top of the market and it's hard not to see one in a pit at any kind of form of motorsports. I can say that from my side.
Yeah, I know for me personally, I always talk about it. I do my own maintenance. I change my own oil. I do all of those things, especially when it comes to working on my motorcycle. And I don't know if it was a K&N thing, but whoever decided to weld a nut onto the top of an oil filter is just genius, because I've got any number of oil filter wrenches, but it's easy to not have to look for them when I misplace them somewhere else, but I can always find my socket. So that's just such a convenient thing, more so than I ever realized it would be.
Yeah. No, we'll take credit for that one, Brad. We will.
Okay, good. Because it works. But but again, like you mentioned, I mean, if you go into the auto parts store, really, if you just go onto the website, for K&N, that's pretty most amazing place to find just the depth of products that you use, because I think a lot of people who've been familiar with the brand for a few decades now just simply think of high flow air filters, and it's gone so far beyond that now.
That's correct. And not to mention, we've jumped into the HVAC space for your home too. So we have reusable home filters as well. So, and they've got full cleaning kits. So we've really tried to expand, like we talked about, but other filtration as well.
The website K&N Filters, obviously a great resource to get whatever you need, which is wonderful. But we did talk about the customization and different things. So I do want to also bring that to light as well. You have an 800 number if someone needs to call and, talk about their specific application?
Yeah, I do.
Sure. Yeah. Our 800 number, 800-858-3333. And there's a prompter that'll take you, and probably the best place to go to would be our customer service department. You can also reach them at tech, TECH at knfilters.com. And we've got an incredibly talented and large staff that are a majority of automotive enthusiasts themselves. That's one thing you'll find common among K&N is the number of automotive enthusiasts that all have a long history with K&N. We've got a number of those. So you'll enjoy the chat, I'm sure.
No, that's awesome. Jonathan, Tony, is there anything that maybe we haven't covered here that you guys want to make sure that we mention?
You've done your job well.
Yeah. Well, good.
Good job.
That's all thanks to your help. But look, I can't think of a better way to kick off 2022 with our Race Industry Now webinars than with such a familiar brand like K&N, and not just a familiar brand, but one who also puts a lot into motorsports and into racing. It doesn't matter where you are. If you are at an off-road event, a monster truck event, a NASCAR race, a marine event, whatever it is, you're going to see K&N there. So just as an industry and as a community, it's great to see just how deeply involved you are.
Yeah. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yep. We'll keep it going.
Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. And we pushed K&N's product back on the homepage of Epartrade. So feel free to go to epartrade.com, and right there you can connect with K&N and their latest product as well. And so this year we have made the decision to, because people are very busy as well. So we keep it to about 45 minutes, 50 minutes. And the webinar has been recorded, and it will be posted later on the platform as well on our podcast YouTube channel. And I should mention something about the podcast, Brad. Our good friend Zach Shapiro, who's part of the Epartrade team and works really hard with us, is involved, in a lot of the buyers activation. And one thing happened. He was talking last week to a big engine shop in North Carolina. And the guy said they have on the sound system the podcast. So they basically put a podcast on the sound system. So I guess a lot of people like the podcast as well. And so the webinars are recorded on the platform, YouTube and podcasts, etc. So next week we'll be back.
Right? We will. Yeah, Hyperfuels. That's going to be fun.
Exactly. So we're going to bring Jess Hewitt from Hyperfuel, and is going to be talking about fuel technology and issues with shipping race fuel. So that's they have come up with some great concept and tools to help. So thank you very much for being with us today. We wish you a very good week, and we'll see you very soon at the racetrack. Thank you.
Thank you.
Registering on Epartrade is easy. Fill out your name, email, phone number, and create a secure password. Next, select your business type. Choose supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose Racing Business if you're looking to find new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose Race Team if you own or are a member of a professional racing team. Begin typing your company name. We most likely already have your company in our database, which you can select from the drop-down. Then, enter your job title. Choose Claim Company if you'll be editing your company profile. Other members of your company can choose Join Company if they'd like to use Epartrade as well. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Click Register Now, and your registration will be submitted for approval. You'll need to confirm your email once it goes through. To keep our platform industry only, you'll be approved shortly after. If we require additional proof of business, we'll reach out. Welcome to Epartrade.